Good afternoon. My name is Iris Ramirez, and today I'll be presenting on opiates, the line between relief and ruin. Throughout this presentation, I'll be looking at how opiates function not just as a drug, but as a systemic level issue, examining their effects on the body, the individual, and the broader impact on families and society, along with how we intervene and support recovery. When we examine opiates historically, what becomes apparent is that their trajectory is not accidental. It reflects in intersections of medicine, accessibility, and human vulnerability. Initially derived from the popium poppy, opiates were considered a breakthrough in pain management, particularly in surgical and trauma-related care. However, as these substances became more accessible and more potent, their use expanded beyond controlled medical contexts. What we see over time is a gradual shift from therapeutic use to widespread exposure, which ultimately contributed to patterns of misuse. This progression highlights a critical point. Opiates did not become dangerous in isolation, they became dangerous through scale, accessibility, and reinforcement. From a physiological perspective, opiates exert their effects by binding to receptors that regulate pain, reward, and vital functioning. While the immediate outcomes may be analgesia and a sense of euphoria, the same mechanisms simultaneously suppress essential bodily processes. This dual effect is what makes opiates particularly dangerous as the central nervous system becomes depressed, breathing and heart rates are slowed, which introduces a significant risk for respiratory failure. Over time, the body adapts, requiring increased amounts of the substance to achieve the same effect, which further elevates the risk of overdose. So, what begins as a controlled interaction with the body gradually becomes a dysregulated physiological state. Moving beyond the body, the impact of opiates at the individual level is best understood through neurobehavioral disruption. These substances do not simply influence mood, they restructure the brain's reward system, making substances use increasingly prioritized over other behaviors. As this process unfolds, we begin to see impairments in judgment, decision making, and impulse control. Individuals are no longer operating from a fully regulated cognitive state. In addition, opiate use is frequently intertwined with co-occurring psychological conditions further complicating functioning. Over time, the individual's identity, roles, and daily functioning begin to erode, not because of a lack of desire to change, but because of the underlying neurobiological systems that support regulation have been altered. When we shift our lens to a systems perspective, the impact of opiate use extends far beyond the individual. Within family systems, substance use often destabilizes roles, disrupts attachment patterns, and erodes trust. Children in these environments are particularly vulnerable as exposure to instability and trauma can shape long term developmental outcomes. What emerges is not just individual dysfunction, but patterns that can be transmitted across generations. At a broader level, communities experience increased strain on healthcare systems, child welfare services, and the criminal justice system. This is why opiate use must be understood not only as an individual issue, but as a complex public health and societal concern. The disease models offers a critical framework for understanding addiction by shifting the conversation away from moral judgment and toward neurobiological understanding. Within this model, addiction is conceptualized as a chronic and relapsing condition that alters the brain circuitry. Specifically, opiates disrupt dopaminergic pathways associated with reward and motivation while also impairing executive functioning within the prefrontal cortex. This creates the neurological environment where substance use is reinforced even in the presence of negative consequences. Importantly, this model does not eliminate personal responsibility, but it reframes addiction as a condition that requires treatment, ongoing management, and a reduction in stigma. Considering intervention, it is essential to move beyond one-dimensional approach and instead integrate strategies that address both cognition and emotional regulation. Cognitive behavioral therapy focuses on identifying the relationship between thoughts, behaviors, and substance use, allowing individuals to develop more adaptive coping strategies. Dialectical behavioral therapy extends this by targeting emotional dysregulation and distress tolerance, which are often central to substance use behaviors. Together, these approaches provide a more comprehensive framework for intervention. In terms of level of care, intensive outpatient treatment allows for structured clinical support while maintaining connection to daily environments. This is particularly important as it enables individuals to actively apply therapeutic skills within real world contexts rather than in isolation. The role of the social worker is inherently multidimensional, requiring the integration of clinical, systemic, and advocacy-based approaches. Social workers are uniquely positioned to assess not only substance use but the broader biopsychosocial factors that contribute to it. This includes trauma, environmental stressors, and systemic barriers. Through interdisciplinary collaboration, social workers help coordinate care across multiple systems while also advocating for access to resources that support recovery. Ultimately, the goal is not simply symptom reduction, but the restoration of functioning, autonomy, and long term stability. Biblical framework introduces an additional layer of understanding by emphasizing the inherent dignity and worth of every individual. It challenges us to approach substance use not with condemnation, but with compassion, service, and responsibility. The concept of bearing one another's burdens reinforces the idea that healing is not an individual process alone, but a collective responsibility. At the same time, it acknowledges brokenness while affirming the potential for restoration. In many ways, this perspective aligns closely with the core values of social work: dignity, service, and advocacy, while also grounding the work in a deeper sense of purpose. To conclude, I wrote this original poem to reflect the psychological, relational, and societal impact of opiate use while also emphasizing the role of healing and restoration. I like to share this. It's called Between Relief and Ruin. It starts as relief, just a break from the pain, a moment of calm in a mind full of strain. What feels like control slowly slips out of view as the line starts to blur between ruin and you. The body feels heavy, the thoughts start to race. You're losing yourself but still wearing your face. What once brought you comfort now pulls you within, and the fight that you are fighting feels harder to win. The choices get clouded, the vision gets dim, and the voice of addiction grows louder within. Families feel it in silence and cries, and children who question the truth from the lies. In homes that once held love, now fractured by pain, and cycles that echo again and again. Communities carry the weight of it all, watching too many continue to fall. But this is not over. Not where it will end, because even in darkness, there's light that can mend. There's still something human, still something divine, still something untouched that refuses decline. And this is where we choose to stand and begin, not judging the struggle but stepping within. With knowledge and purpose, with heart and with vision, we guide them through chaos toward strength and decision. Because the line between relief and ruin isn't where hope gives in, it's the place where rebuilding, where healing begins. This presentation is grounded in current research on opiate use, addiction, and evidence-based treatment. These sources highlight the neurobiological nature of addiction, its systemic impact, and the importance of informed evidence-based care and practice. Thank you.